Well, how many times does it mention the mitzvah of putting on tefillin?
At least twice.
Actually, 4 times, okay? The 4 paragraphs that go into the tefillin boxes, both the head and the hand, are the 4 places in the Torah that mention the mitzvah of tefillin. It doesn't use the word tefillin explicitly, but it's talking about the mitzvah of tefillin. Okay? 4 times. Now, the Torah does not actually spell out too much about the tefillin. And that's why it's very, very interesting. That's one of the proofs that there is an oral tradition. Because without an oral tradition, it would be impossible for a person to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. It doesn't, what would he do? He'd have no idea. How do you do it? Is it square? Is it circular? Is it black? Is it polka dots? What is it? Nobody would know from reading the Bible, from reading the Chumash. The 4 places do not tell us how they are supposed to look. They barely tell us where you're supposed to put them, barely, okay? You need an oral tradition. I say this is a very, very strong proof that there's an oral tradition. Even the Karaites and the Sadducees that said we don't accept the oral tradition of the rabbis. Yeah? We're willing to follow the written word, but we're not willing to follow the oral tradition. Guess what? They had to make up their own oral tradition, because without an oral tradition, you cannot fulfill the mitzvah. That's a very, very important thing to realize, that so much of this mitzvah of tefillin is part of our oral tradition. There is one thing that the Torah does say explicitly about tefillin, okay? It says about tefillin, "Leman tiyeh Toras Hashem beficha." We wear tefillin in order that the Torah of the Almighty shall be in our mouth. From that, the Gemara extrapolates, you know what extrapolate means? The Gemara extrapolates that the tefillin have to be made from a species of animal that's kosher. That does not mean that the animal has to be slaughtered in a kosher fashion. It doesn't even have to be slaughtered kosher style, right? It doesn't have to be a kosher shchita, but it has to be from a kosher species, okay? And therefore, once upon a time, they used to make tefillin, they would use the leather, the skin of sheep or goats to make tefillin. Nowadays, that almost doesn't exist. Nowadays, everyone that's serious buys what's called gasos, thick-skinned tefillin. Thick skin, where does the tefillin come from? If it's thick, not from a goat, and not from a sheep, but rather from a cow. From a cow. From what part of the cow do they get the boxes? Do they make the boxes? From the, who said that? Oh, yeah. Now I have to really work today. Somebody knows something. Okay, that's correct. That's correct. From the neck, it's very thick leather. I want to mention that there are actually 3 different ways, basic general ways of making tefillin. There are what's called simple tefillin. The next level is thin-skinned tefillin. And the next level is thick-skinned tefillin. Point of information, tefillin, each one of the tefillahs has to be a single piece, okay? But in fact, it's made from more than one piece of leather. So how do they get around the requirement that it be a single piece? The answer is, let's start with the simple tefillin. The simple tefillin is basically, it's parchment. It's very thin, it's parchment. And they shape it, okay? They have the top, that's one unit, what comes up. Then they have the base, which is another unit. And the base has a hole in it so that you can fit the top into the base. And glue it. It has to be kosher glue. It has to be kosher glue. Does Elmer's make the grade? Yeah, because it's chemicals. It's not made from lard or not made from an animal, right? So all these things are good. Yeah? It fits in. Then you have to glue it in place. And then maybe your stitching will also keep it as one unit. Okay, but it's made of different units, clearly, right? It's just we glue it in place and we sew it in place. Now, there's a big question in halacha as to whether that makes it a single piece, the gluing and the stitching. Is that really a single piece? And this was an issue that was discussed. It was resolved by a very great rabbi, and after the Chatam Sofer, right, Rav Moshe Sofer, after he wrote, no one disagreed. Everyone accepted his opinion. He said that it's kosher. But it's clearly not an ideal to make a single piece out of gluing and sewing. Clearly not ideal. And there are ways of making it that make it much less than ideal. If the top piece that goes into the hole doesn't have flaps that are able to be sewn into the bottom, it's called b'diavad. If you have nothing better, you can use it because the Chatam Sofer said it's okay, but it ain't ideal. Now I will tell you that this kind of tefillin, what's called pshutos, that's the term in Hebrew, pshutos, simple tefillin, that they are available. You can get them, at least the last time I checked, you can get them in the Reform Synagogue gift shop, right? They still sell it, right? And it costs maybe $500 in America, which is really ridiculous, really ridiculous. Because over here to make it, it shouldn't cost more than $150. Okay, the parchments that they put in are very minimal because you're not going to put a Cadillac engine into a Rambler. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? You know what a Rambler is? It's still around? Into a Studebaker. Yeah, the Cadillac engine into a Studebaker. It doesn't know whether to fly or to stand still. So they put in very minimal parchments, which are very questionable on their own. Nevertheless, there are people that say they don't want to spend a lot of money on tefillin. I had a relative, he passed away. He had a store on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, a very well-known store. The name of the store was Eisenbach, okay? It was also his last name, and also my last name. But he was a distant relative. Anyway, he told me once the story. Somebody came in from Florida to buy a pair of tefillin for his bar mitzvah boy. The boy was going to get bar mitzvah. And he says to my relative, he says to him, I want the least expensive pair of tefillin you have. The least expensive? Such a beautiful mitzvah. Yeah, the least expensive. Okay, the least expensive in those days was $50. The guy says, I'll give you 40. And my relative said, I'm giving you the rock bottom price because you don't want to spend money. 50 is it. You know, and the guy says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a penny more than 40. This goes back and forth for another half a minute, 1 minute, whatever. And then my relative says, look, I will not let you leave the store without a pair of tefillin. If you're unreasonable and you're only willing to pay $40, so be it. But just tell me one thing. How much money are you spending on the dancing girls at the affair? You understand the lack of understanding, lack of appreciation. Anyway, that's pshutos, that's simple tefillin. And nowadays, nobody that's serious buys it. It's minimal because of the issue of more than one piece going into it. It's very flimsy, which is problematic, as I shall explain. The next level up is thin-skin tefillin. There's a famous picture, I don't know if you've seen it, famous picture of the Lubavitcher Rabbi wearing tefillin. He's wearing this middle level, dakos, thin-skin tefillin, in the picture at least. Thin-skin tefillin is made the same way as simple tefillin, except after you have the simple tefillin, you take a piece of thin skin and you pull it over the entire box with the head tefillin. There's 4 different compartments. You just fit it in, right? And you pull it over. It's a single piece enclosing the entire thing. And that, therefore, is truly a single piece, even though it's made up of more than one piece, but nevertheless, it's totally enclosed by a single piece. So that's dakos. And there's even an advantage of dakos over the best, which is because it still is made in a very simple fashion, it can be overseen. You can see, are there any problems? Are there any holes in the leather? Any difficulties? You can see what you're doing, okay? It's not made with any pressure instrument, so it's very easy to keep tabs over what's really happening. That's dakos. And as I said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe wore dakos. Many people wore dakos, thin-skin tefillin. The highest level is something which 100-some years ago, maybe 120 years ago, whatever it was, around the beginning of the 20th century, that's when they started making this thick-skin tefillin. Until then, they could not make gasos. Gasos, gas means fat, thick. Okay, gasos refers to animals that are thick-skinned, yeah? Until then, they couldn't do it because they didn't have the compression instruments, the instruments that could press the leather into the proper shape. Now we have it, already going back to the beginning of the 20th century. We're in the 21st now, right? Okay, beginning of the 20th, 1900, around then. These tefillin are also built up. One should not think that by getting gasos, he's getting one single piece for the hand and one single piece for the head. It's built up to give it body, shape, resilience, and basically, you probably know a tefillah, right, is one piece of leather which is folded into shape, okay? And in doing that, they ideally don't want the top to touch the bottom. One piece and fold it over, right? Different compartments. They don't want the top to touch the bottom because if there's any moisture in the top, it's going to negatively affect the bottom. Why have two problems, yeah? So what they do is they build it up. This is their rationale. They build it up. In the middle of the tefillin, they make it a little bit higher, a little bit thicker. How can you tell if your tefillah was built up, if your tefillin are built up, or if it's mamish, a single piece? You can tell only by looking at the place where the tefillah goes around, i.e. the back. If you see the back of the tefillah, you can see the real thickness of the leather. Because as I said, they build it up and then they paint it. They paint it many times, and you're not going to know unless you look in the right place to see if it's built up or not. Be that as it may, because it's thick leather, let's say something happens to the square. Tefillin has to be square. Each of the boxes has to be square in 3 places. The top has to be totally square. The base has to be square by the stitching. And the outer level of the base also has to be totally square. What is this? Okay. So, because it's thick, let's say you're davening at the kosel and you lose the battle with the Western Wall, and you hit your head into the wall, and it causes the leather to lose its square. Yeah, what do? With thick-skinned tefillin, it can easily be fixed. I don't know exactly how they do it. They put some water on it so it expands, and then they have tefillin dust. They've ground leather, and they fill it in, and I don't know exactly how they do it, but they do it, and then you get a perfect pair once again, and it doesn't cost that much. It's not that difficult for them to do. But with thin-skin tefillin, your outer layer is a thin piece of skin. With simple tefillin, you don't even have that. If you fight a war against the kotel, not only will you lose, okay, but also the tefillin are ruined. It's going to lose its square, and there's nothing they can do. If there's a hole, forget it. They can't fix a hole in thin-skin tefillin or in simple tefillin. Okay, you got that? So that's a very major advantage in thick-skinned tefillin. Another thing is, there is an oral tradition as to how many holes have to be drilled around and has to be stitched. The stitching is done with the sinew from the animal, okay? And it can't be fishnet. It has to be something from an animal. And those holes should be very, very, very small. Because as you stitch, you go down and then up and then down and then up. And then as you come around the second time, you go up and then down and up and then down, so that through each hole, the sinew is going twice. Once it's going down and once it's going up. And in order to be kosher, it has to be touching. The sinew going up and the sinew going down have to be touching. How are they going to be touching if your holes are primitive holes that are too big? In the simple tefillin, they don't get small holes. They put in larger holes, and that's problematic because your sinew is not going to be touching. You understand what I'm saying? Okay? I'm trying to restrict myself to English. Okay, fine. So, but with thick-skinned tefillin, they can always remake it because there's a lot of flesh to the tefillin. Okay. Now, the next thing you have to know is the parchments. The parchments are written on parchment. Yeah. And what's written, as I mentioned before, the 4 paragraphs of Shema that are of the Torah that mention tefillin. One of them is Shema. There's a paragraph, Al Yom Shamoa, Al Yoki Yiviacha, and what's the 4th one? Kadesh. Kadesh is the first one, okay? Now, tefillin has a very big stringency, and that is that the parchments, as well as the individual words, have to be written in order. If you make a mistake and you only realize you made a mistake after 2 more lines, you wrote another 2 lines, you have to erase those 2 lines. You can't just make a correction on the parchment. It has to be kesidron. We learned that there has to be in order, everything. We learned that from V'haya, Kadi Asan Yehu. It has to be exactly as it appears, word after word. Okay? Once I was at a checker, a guy that professionally checks mezuzahs and tefillin parchments, and there was somebody that had given him something to check, and the guy came and the checker told him it's puzzle. Why is it puzzle? He showed him the second word. The second word was written with a mistake. The guy was distraught. That means he spent like 2 hours after the second word writing the mezuzah. It happened to have been a mezuzah writing it, and it was just a waste of time. There's no way that he can correct it. What, he's going to erase all those lines and start again from the second word? Ridiculous. It'll look like a 6-year-old wrote it, right? Doesn't go. So that's a very big stringency. It has to be written in order. Each parchment and the parchments themselves have to be written in order. First is Kadesh, then V'yoki V'yacha, V'yoyim Shema, and then Shema. Okay, so now what happens if it's written in order? Then it has to be put into the hand and to the head boxes. Okay, the hand is a single box. The head is really divided up into 4 different compartments. Why is that? Why is the head 4 different compartments? Somebody once explained to me there are 4 sections of the brain. Right? The tefillin on the head, tefillah on the head, really corresponds to the 4 sections of the brain. I don't know if people knew that in the old days. We had a tradition like that. The hand is only 1 compartment, and the parchments are written on 1 long strip of parchment or on individual strips, but it's connected, it's sewn together. So what does that represent? That represents the fact that when it comes to thought, a person can have different ways of viewing things, right? Maybe this is right, maybe that's right, third way, fourth, maybe they're all right, right? But when it comes to action, there's only one way. You can't drive the horse forward and backward at the same time unless you're very skilled. Maybe if you're very skilled, you know how to do it. But normally, you can't go in 2 different directions at the same time. You got that? So the head tefillin is 4 different compartments. The hand is only 1. Now, if you look at the head, you'll see that there's a very, very interesting thing. The shin, there's a shin on the head tefillin. And one side, it's 3 heads to the shin, like we're familiar with. On the other side, it's 4 heads to the shin. Did you ever see a 4-headed shin? It's like the fearsome foursome, Los Angeles Rams, 1960. Yeah? What's that? That's because there's a machlokes whether the 3-pronged shin is the right shin or is it the area around the 3-pronged shin, which is the real shin. Did you understand what I just said? So it could be that it's 4. So with tefillin, we have 1 on one side, 1 on the other side. You got that? Now, it's time for us to appreciate that this is a very, very important mitzvah. And I just want to say that I brought several pairs of tefillin. I don't want to ask an embarrassing question. Who hasn't put on tefillin today? But who wants to volunteer to put on tefillin for us? Okay, Shlomi. Okay. Are you right-handed or left-handed? You're a righty? Okay, so what is that all about? That's all about, it says, Yodecha is spelled with a kaf at the end. With a hey at the end. Yodecha, with a hey at the end. And from that we understand Yad Keha, your dull hand. You put your tefillin on your dull hand. Okay? Now, that means if you're a righty, you would put it on your left hand. If you're a lefty, you put it on your right hand. What about the person that's ambidextrous? He puts it on the right hand. He puts it on his, he writes with he's a righty, as well as a lefty, he puts it on his left hand like everybody else, okay? Like most people, okay? This is for a lefty. You're a lefty, you're a righty. That's not for you. Is there anyone that's a lefty over here? Who's a lefty? Okay? Maybe we have one over here. This is a head, and this is a tail. This is a righty pair. But this is a righty pair, but it wraps outwards. Do you wrap outwards or inwards?
I could do either one. I usually do inwards. I used to do outwards.
Okay. This is you have to wrap outwards. Now, there's some interesting things with the tefillin. Okay, gentlemen, I want you to pay attention. Don't miss this. The tefillin, the hand tefillah, excuse me. The hand tefillah has a knot on the box, right? On the tefillin box. The knot always has to go next to your body. So in other words, if you're going to be putting it on your right hand because you're a lefty, the knot has to be on the inside. If you're a righty and you're putting it on your left hand, your weaker hand, the knot has to be on the inside, always on the inside. What happens if you're a righty, but you have a pair of tefillin, you have a tefillah for the hand, which is supposed to be worn by someone on his right hand. You're a righty, so you should be putting it on your left hand. But the knot is on the inside for a lefty, on the right hand. I'm confusing you. Bekitzer, in short, all you have to do is just turn it from bottom to the top, Put it on. So as long as your knot is facing your body. Now, one other thing, and that is that the knot always has to be touching the ketzitza, the part that goes up. People don't know this. You got to know it. Okay, the knot has to be touching. Everyone is makbid about it. It's a halach in Shulchan Aruch. I will say that there is, the Chabadnikim, the Lubavitchers, are not makbid about this. Okay? They're not. They have their own reason for it, but everyone else holds that it has to be touching, and that's why you have this little yadala, it's called, the little yad thing, the cover, right, that is cut out so that the knot can be touching the ketzitza, the part that goes up. This is only with the hand tefillin that you have such a thing. You have a knot on the side. Okay, everyone understood so far? Put it on. You're a righty or a lefty?
Righty.
You're a righty? Okay, so you have to use that. Yeah?
What's the guard on the arm?
The guard.
Yeah, what is the...
It says, "V'yolecha la'osa yodecha." It shall be for you a sign on your arm. For you? What do you mean for you? Of course. Nain. It's trying to teach you that it should not be visible. Whatever you want. You could, or you just try, you just show and tell. It should not be visible. That's why it has to be covered. Now, if you don't have one of these covers, it's a cheap thing, right? Nothing's so outstanding about it. Just cover your hand tefillin with your sleeve. Your tankless, your tank top, whatever, you don't have a sleeve, now you have a problem. But that's not for this class. Okay? Maybe you have more than one problem there. Yes?
The way he's putting it on, does it have to be 2 fingers above the elbow?
Ideally, it has to go on the bicep. Is that the right word? Bicep? Has to be on the bone. Say, remember, it's from here to here that we measure. It's not too high. It's still, it's okay. It's okay. It's not too high. It's not too high. Okay? Now, there are people that go around 3 times over here. Some of the Hasidic ones. He's wrapping it outwards. Some of the Hasidic ones wrap it with a shin, 3 things up on top. Not a requirement. It's a custom. Not everybody has it. Rabbi Green is the next teacher. The bell has rung. Okay? We were on the tarp, but the count in the state of New Jersey ends at the end of 3 minutes. Okay? So therefore, huh? Another questions?
Just one.
Okay, just one question.
Small. Which level of tefillin is this one?
This is actually a thick skin. But if you look at it, you see it's not that thick, but it is thick skin. Okay? The yeshiva has a gemach of tefillin for people that need to borrow, whatever, until they buy through me their pair of tefillin. Did you hear that? Okay? So we lend out tefillin, and I think 99 out of 100 pairs that we have, they're all thick skin. Nowadays, that's the way to go. Because the way they make tefillin, you can get a pair of tefillin nowadays for 2,300 shekel. Well, that's about like $600. In America, the same pair would cost $1,500. Do you hear that? If you get it over here from a batemacher or somebody that makes tefillin, and he doesn't make profit on the parchments, he buys the parchments directly from the sofer, right? And he's controlling the price. Don't worry, he's making his profit. And he's only charging you 2,300 shekel for a pair of thick-skinned tefillin that'll last for your entire life. You want to give it to your child, okay? But he'll say, Dad, I want a new pair. Okay, a new pair. It's unbelievably cheap. In America, the price is at least twice as much from a normal store because they didn't make it over there. Tefillin are made all over here. Parchments, there's some sofrim that write in America. But the boxes, they're all made over here. The leather, it's all from here. Made in Israel, not Palestine. Made in Israel. What?
It has to be, right? Like it has to be made in...
No, it can be made anywhere. But the leather, it's a funny thing. The leather of the cows over here is good for tefillin. I was told this, I don't know if it's accurate, but if they use leather from Texas, it ain't good. The Longhorns, no. A&M, that's different, okay? Yeah.
What about the boxes of the film? What about the actual straps?
The straps have to be also made from an animal. Okay? Now, Rabbi, tell me I can go another 15 minutes. No, that's already beyond that. Okay. You should know. Nowadays, everybody gets black on both sides. So that if it turns out it's still black, tefillin straps have to be black. Tefillin straps, in that respect, are more important than the boxes. If the box is white, it's kosher. But it's kosher. If the strap is white, no, not kosher. There was a Jew that was making straps in a place we've heard about in the news, Ukraine. Okay? Very questionable. And they put a lacquer on the top of it, and it just peeled off, very problematic. And when they found it out, the Yated Ne'aman, one of the papers, made a big stink about it. And all the Batamachas were using it because it was half the price. So that has stopped. Now you can get this. The Mishnah Berurah does not write that you need to get black on both sides. And until very recent times, you couldn't get it. The Rambam holds that you have to have it, black on both sides. Any Sephardim, they have to be careful about this. Nowadays, the difference in price between straps that are black on both sides versus straps that are only black on one side is so minimal that everybody gets black on both sides. I'm not sure about the Reform bookstore.
What's the difference between Rashi's
Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. There's a story that Rashi was holding his grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, on his lap, and Rabbeinu Tam was reaching up and trying to pull off the shell rosh of Rashi. Do you believe that? Don't. Okay? Anyway, there's a difference in terms of the order of the parchments. That's all. The order that they have to be put in. Okay? There are actually 64 permutations of tefillin. How to put it in the right order, from which side to which side. And there are two major ones, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. And there are two others, the Ravid and there's Shimush Rabbah. About them you have to listen to Rabbi Green. I'm sure that he'll touch upon that in the next class. Okay, we're finished.